I disregarded the chief physician's directive to save a patient, thereby sealing my own fate. A commission was hastily convened against me, initiating a thorough investigation. Despair had begun to set in when the patient I had rescued suddenly awoke, grasped my hand, and whispered, "Let them try. Tomorrow they'll crawl on their knees begging for your mercy." Hello, and welcome to Life in History. Before we begin, please share where you are tuning in from. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoy this compelling life story. Angelina stood by the window of the intensive care unit, watching the bleak autumn rain as it tapped against the glass, as if attempting to force its way inside. She had dedicated 10 years to this city hospital, starting from the very bottom as a newly qualified nurse. Full of ambition and ideals, she had later advanced to the position of a physician assistant in the cardiology department after completing specialized advanced training courses. Every day, Angelina faced the most intricate challenges the human body could present. Throughout her years in medicine, she had witnessed an extraordinary array of scenarios, from quiet, almost imperceptible recoveries and the jubilant elation of loved ones as patients gradually returned to normal life, to tragic and sudden losses, where a heart would abruptly fail like a worn-out light bulb, leaving behind only emptiness and grief. But this particular day was unlike any other. It was steeped in a palpable tension and drama that hung in the air like a thick fog. In one of the rooms lay a patient, an elderly gentleman named Ilya Viktorovich, who had recently turned 70 and was suffering from an acute myocardial infarction. He'd been admitted to the hospital the previous evening, just as the night shift was preparing for rest. The chief physician, Dr. Kovalyov, known for his stern demeanor and unwavering resolve, a middle-aged man with a formidable gaze and a habit of issuing orders in a tone that brooked no argument, had immediately given a clear and unequivocal directive to all staff. No experiments or deviations from the norm were permitted. Strict adherence to the standard treatment protocol, established by years of practice and official recommendations, was paramount. "We are not some cutting-edge research facility where we can conduct experiments on people," he had boomed, irate, at the morning meeting where all physicians and nurses gathered to plan the day's work, his voice echoing off the sterile white walls of the conference room. "Stick to the instructions outlined in our documents, or you'll face the consequences, which will be severe for all of us." Angelina understood perfectly why Dr. Kovalyov was so incensed and why his words sounded like a warning of an impending storm. The entire hospital was undergoing a rigorous inspection by the Ministry of Health. The institution's funding was precarious, and any, even the slightest, deviation from established norms could jeopardize not only the bonuses everyone eagerly anticipated, but also the jobs of many employees, including those who had served for decades. Ilya Viktorovich presented a particularly complex case, demanding exceptional care and caution. He suffered from a rare and dangerous allergy to standard anticoagulants, medications typically used to thin the blood and prevent clots. The monitor connected to his body relentlessly indicated that the patient's condition was deteriorating minute by minute. His blood pressure continued to plummet, and his heart arrhythmia intensified, becoming increasingly chaotic and ominous, foretelling disaster. She meticulously reviewed all the medical records in his chart. The chief physician had personally prescribed conservative therapy, which included administering beta blockers to stabilize his heart rhythm and simply monitoring his progress without any radical interventions. However, Angelina, with her extensive experience and intuition honed over years of practice, felt a deep inner certainty that this approach was insufficient, too passive, and unlikely to succeed. In this critical situation, a small ampule of a novel medication lay in her bag, stored in the locker room. It was an experimental thrombolytic, a potent clot-dissolving agent, which she had received from an old colleague in another major city where advanced research was being conducted. This medication had not yet received official approval and was not part of the standard protocol. However, based on clinical trial data she had diligently studied in her spare time, it had repeatedly saved patients in similar desperate circumstances where traditional methods had proven futile. An internal conflict raged within her. "What if I'm wrong?" she thought, clenching her fists. "Kovalyov will fire me on the spot without a second thought. I have a daughter, and this cursed mortgage on the apartment demands monthly payments that I can barely manage on my salary. But this man, this elderly patient, is dying before my eyes. I cannot just stand by and watch, pretending everything is fine, when I know I can intervene and change the outcome." She recalled her own mother, who had succumbed to a similar heart attack 5 years prior. At that time, the doctors had also adhered strictly to the protocol, and nothing had changed. Angelina did not want to repeat the same mistake, did not want to live with that burden of guilt. With a profound sigh, she resolutely entered the room, donned sterile gloves, and carefully administered the medication intravenously, watching as the fluid slowly entered the patient's bloodstream. Ilya Viktorovitch's heart responded almost immediately. His pulse, which had been erratic and weak, gradually stabilized, becoming steady and strong, while his blood pressure, which had been falling to critical levels, began to rise slowly, offering hope for recovery. She dabbed the sweat from her brow beneath her lab coat sleeve, feeling her own heart pounding like a drum, its rhythm resonating in her ears. But her relief was short-lived. An hour later, Kovalyov stormed into the department, his face flushed, a stack of papers in his hand. "Who administered this damn thrombolytic?" he roared, causing the nurses to freeze in their tracks, pointing a finger at the monitor displaying the patient's updated vital signs. "This is completely off protocol, Angelina. How dare you do this?" She nodded, meeting his gaze directly. "Yes, doctor, I did," she replied firmly. "The patient was dying. His readings were dropping every minute, and I saved him by intervening in time." Kovalyov scoffed. "Saved him? You violated a direct order that I issued to everyone without exception. This could not only have killed him by causing unpredictable complications, but could have led to us all being brought to justice, facing an investigation. Report to my office immediately, and we will deal with this thoroughly." In the chief physician's office, the air was heavy, like the moments before a thunderstorm. Kovalyov paced back and forth, seething with anger. His glasses fogged up, forcing him to wipe them repeatedly with a handkerchief. "Do you understand what you've done? We are already under intense scrutiny from the Ministry of Health. Their inspection hangs over us like the sword of Damocles. Any deviation from the norms, any violation, and funding will be drastically cut, and the hospital might even face partial closure. And then you come along with your heroism, your unauthorized actions. I am convening a commission right now. There will be a full review of all your actions over the past month, every protocol, every entry. And prepare yourself mentally. This could result in dismissal under a clause that will blacklist you from other healthcare institutions." Angelina sat upright, but inwardly she felt a knot tightening. "I did what I believed was right in that situation. The patient is alive because of it. His life has been preserved." Kovalyov waved his hand dismissively. "Right. Rules exist to be followed by everyone, without exception. They are written in blood and the experience of generations. Get out of here and pray he doesn't die from your experiments, from this unapproved medication. Otherwise, a simple dismissal will be the least of your worries. This could escalate to criminal charges." She left, her legs feeling weak. In the corridor, colleagues whispered amongst themselves, casting sympathetic yet cautious glances her way. Angelina was in deep trouble. Kovalyov was furious. She went into the locker room, sat on the bench, and wept quietly, silently. 10 years here is not just a job, it's my life. I loved the patients, their stories, their grateful looks, and now dismissal. Masha's daughter will ask, "Mom, why aren't you at work?" How can I explain? She began to gather her belongings, photos from staff parties, her favorite mug with "Best Physician Assistant" written on it. She mentally bid farewell to every corner of the hospital, the coffee machine in the doctor's lounge where they shared jokes during night shifts, the view from the window overlooking the park where she smoked during breaks. In the evening, before leaving, she visited Ilya Viktorovich. He lay connected to various machines, but his breathing was even. She checked his readings. All stable. "Thank you," she whispered, though he was asleep. But suddenly his hand twitched, squeezing her fingers. His eyes fluttered open, cloudy but lucid. "Let them try," he whispered barely audibly. "Tomorrow they will beg you for forgiveness." Angelina froze, her heart stopping. What did he mean? Who were they? But the patient closed his eyes again, and she left in complete confusion. The tension mounted. What awaited her tomorrow? Dismissal seemed inevitable, but if faced with the same situation again, she would act the same. Despite the intrigue and obstacles, she remained human, someone who chose life over rules. Angelina didn't sleep all night. Ilya Viktorovich's words echoed in her mind. What did he know? Who was he? She reviewed his medical history. An ordinary pensioner, seemingly a retired engineer, alone, with no relatives, nothing suspicious. But his words had ignited a spark within her, not of hope, but of defiance. "If I'm going to fall, I'll fall with my head held high," she thought, gazing at the ceiling of her small apartment. Her daughter, Masha, was sleeping in the next room, and Angelina didn't want to wake her. In the morning, she kissed the girl's cheek and said, "Mommy's going to work today, but I'll be back early." She left, clutching her bag of documents. The commission awaited her at the hospital. Kovalyov had not been joking. The commission convened in the conference room, a stern table covered in green felt, much like a courtroom. Present were the deputy chief physician, a woman with a sharp gaze named Irina Sergeyevna, the head of the cardiology department, a couple of lawyers from the hospital administration, and even a representative from the ministry who had arrived specifically for this. Angelina was the last to enter, wearing her white coat, which suddenly felt too restrictive. "Please be seated, Angelina Vladimirovna," Kovalyov said in an official tone. "We are here to review your incident." They began with the protocol. Irina Sergeyevna read out the entries. Violation of Order Number 47 dated October 10th of this year. Unauthorized administration of an unapproved medication without prior consultation with the chief physician or a counsel. Risk to patient's health. Potential complications, including possible allergic reactions, side effects, and even a fatal outcome in unforeseen circumstances. Angelina sat upright, her hands resting on her knees. A storm raged within her. They didn't understand. He was dying, but she remained silent, waiting. The head of the cardiology department, old Dr. Smirnov, whom she deeply respected for his years of experience, accumulated through countless night shifts and complex surgeries, sighed profoundly with regret in his voice, and addressed her directly. "Angelina, you are an experienced specialist with a decade of service in our hospital. You know all the nuances of working in cardiology. Why did you take such a step? We could have adjusted the protocol together, discussed options at a meeting. You could have approached me personally, proposed your solution, and we would have found a way without breaking the rules." She replied quietly but firmly. There was not a single second to spare for deliberation or consultation. The patient's condition was deteriorating rapidly. His vitals were dropping every minute. Arrhythmia was worsening, and his pressure had reached critically low levels. Besides, given your strict order, you would not have approved an experimental medication. I have seen how these situations unfold. But Kovalyov didn't let her finish. "This is not an excuse. Our hospital is on the brink of crisis. The ministry requires detailed reports on every action, every procedure, and you engage in unauthorized actions, risking the entire staff. We will examine all your shifts over the past year, every log entry, every prescription, and if any other violations are found, even minor ones." He didn't finish, but the threat hung in the air. The lawyers nodded, taking notes. Angelina felt the entire system turning against her, not people, but a machine where rules were more important than life. They only see paperwork, she thought. During the break, Irina Sergeyevna approached her. "Why did you do it? Your career is on the line." Angelina looked into her eyes. "Because he is a living person, with feelings, with his own story. Not just a number on a medical chart, not statistics for a report." After the break, the investigation continued in full swing. They delved into her records. Here, she was 5 minutes late for a shift. There, she performed an additional analysis without an order. Minor quibbles, but they accumulated like a snowball. Kovalyov announced, "We recommend suspension pending the investigation, and thereafter, dismissal under a clause." Angelina nodded, but something inside her broke. She left the room, her legs unresponsive. In the corridor, colleagues averted their eyes. Fear was contagious. Only Nurse Lyuda whispered, "Hang in there, Gelia. You were absolutely right. Don't doubt it. You saved a human life, that's what matters, and the rest will sort itself out." She went to the doctor's lounge, packed her remaining belongings, her notebook with notes, a photo of Masha on the desk. She glanced around for a final farewell, the chair where she sat through long nights, the view of the park where the leaves turned yellow in the rain. 10 years of my life I gave to this," she whispered, "and now it's all because of one ampule." An internal struggle raged. Should she give up? Apologize? But no, she had saved a life. It was worth everything. She visited Ilya Viktorovitch's room one last time. He looked better, had regained consciousness. His face was no longer covered in a waxy pallor. The monitor beeped steadily. "How are you feeling?" she asked. He gave a weak smile. "Alive, thanks to you. Don't give up, girl. Tomorrow everything will be fine, you'll see." His words struck her again. What about tomorrow? She left, filled with doubt. At home, Masha asked, "Mommy, you look sad." Angelina hugged her. "Everything will be all right, sunshine." But the tension inside her did not subside. The machinations of the administration, the bureaucratic obstacles, all of it tried to break her, but she remained human. Kindness does not die from orders. That night, she couldn't sleep thinking about the patient. The next morning at the hospital was like a hurricane. Angelina arrived early to collect her last belongings from her locker, but there was chaos at the entrance. Cars with television station logos, journalists with microphones, camera flashes. "What's happening here?" she mumbled, pushing through the crowd. In the lobby, Lyuda intercepted her. "Gelia, dear, this is all because of your patient, the one you saved. Ilya Viktorovitch. He's not just a modest pensioner, as everyone thought. He's a genuine academic, a Nobel laureate in physics back in the 90s. His contribution to science is immense. His surname is Lavrentiev. He's very well known in scientific circles. His work is cited worldwide. Imagine, he called someone high up in the echelons of power, stirred up a media storm, contacted influential people and, well, brace yourself." Angelina froze. A Nobel laureate. A man whose discoveries had changed the understanding of physics had been in their ordinary room disguised as a simple pensioner. She instantly recalled his medical record entry. A retired engineer with brief mentions of his past without any hint of fame. During his admission, he had not mentioned any awards, only his work in a laboratory many years ago, and his modesty had seemed genuine. And those mysterious words he had whispered yesterday, "Tomorrow they themselves will beg for forgiveness," now made perfect sense. She proceeded to the department where Kovalyov was pacing the corridor, speaking on the phone. "Yes, Mr. Minister. We will absolutely resolve this situation as quickly as possible. No, this is a complete misunderstanding. A simple error in assessing the circumstances. Seeing Angelina, he paled. You, go to the conference room. The commission continues, but with additions. The hall was full. To the previous commission members who had looked so self-assured in their correctness yesterday, new faces had been added, lending the assembly even greater significance. A representative from the Ministry of Health, a solid man in a sharp suit, carrying a briefcase full of documents and reports. A pair of distinguished gentlemen in elegant suits, likely high-ranking representatives from the Russian Academy of Sciences, with serious expressions and badges on their lapels. And even a lawyer, a professional in an expensive suit, whom Lyuda, standing in the doorway, whispered had been sent by Ilya Viktorovich himself to protect Angelina's interests. Kovalyov sat at the head of the long table, but his usual confidence had completely evaporated. He fidgeted in his chair, adjusting his tie, and his voice sounded uncertain. We continue the review of the incident, he began. But the lawyer interrupted. Review? What review? This is not a violation, but the saving of the life of a national hero of our country. My client, the esteemed academician Lavrentiev, demands the full and immediate rehabilitation of Angelina Vladimirovna without any reservations. He has already contacted the press and the minister personally to shed light on this story in the correct perspective. Angelina sat, her hands clasped. The tension mounted. Yesterday she had prepared for dismissal, and today... Irina Sergeyevna, the deputy, flipped through papers. We have thoroughly examined the medication that was administered. It did indeed save the patient's life. This is confirmed by recent analyses and monitoring. However, the protocol was violated, and this sets a precedent. The lawyer smiled. The protocol. And life? Academician Lavrentiev has publicly stated that without Angelina's intervention, he would have died, and he is prepared to testify. Kovalyov began to sweat. We didn't know who he was. And if we had known, Angelina asked quietly, does that fundamentally change matters? Every patient is a person with their unique life, their feelings, regardless of whether they have awards or not, connections, or are just an ordinary pensioner. The commission buzzed. The ministry representative nodded. We have received a direct instruction from the highest leadership. The investigation is closed immediately, with no further repercussions. Angelina Vladimirovna, your actions are deemed not only justified, but heroic. Moreover, we recommend official commendation, possibly even an award for professionalism. Kovalyov cleared his throat, but, and the funding? Funding will be increased, the official cut in, thanks to the publicity of the incident, a personal directive from the minister. Angelina couldn't believe her ears. Her fear had subsided, replaced by burgeoning anger. They changed their minds because of the patient's connections. What if he had been an ordinary person? After the session, Kovalyov approached her. Angelina, I apologize. I was wrong. On behalf of the hospital administration, I extend our apologies for the investigation. She looked at him. You were wrong not only with me, but with everyone whose lives are saved against the rules. He nodded, avoiding her gaze. In the corridor, journalists descended upon her. Tell us more about the rescue. How did you decide to take such a step? She waved them away. I just did my job. But inside, warmth spread. A good deed had come back to her. She went into Ilya Viktorovich's room. He sat up in bed, propped against pillows that had been neatly fluffed by the nurses, reading a fresh newspaper. Seeing her, he put the paper aside, and a warm, fatherly smile appeared on his face, illuminating his features and softening his expression. Did you see what was going on outside? He asked, smiling even wider, a mischievous glint in his eyes. I told you, tomorrow they'll be begging for forgiveness, and here it is, all unfolding as planned. Angelina sat beside him on a chair at the bedside, feeling the weariness of the day's ordeal settling upon her shoulders. But at the same time, a warmth spread within her from his words, like a ray of hope breaking through the clouds. Her hands trembled slightly as she clasped them in her lap, trying to gather her thoughts. "Why didn't you mention who you truly were from the start?" she asked. "When you were admitted to the hospital, you could have disclosed your status, your accolades, and everything would have unfolded differently." He offered a casual shrug, as if it were the most ordinary matter. "I'm not accustomed to special treatment," he replied calmly. His tone was contemplative, the mark of someone who had witnessed much. "I'm not the sort of person to demand privileges or stand out from the crowd. I wish to be a regular patient, just like the thousands of others who pass through these halls each day. I wanted to see firsthand how the system operates for everyone, without exceptions, for ordinary people, without connections or titles. You pass this test with flying colors, my dear, choosing the patient's life, his salvation, over your own career, over fear of superiors or regulations. That's a rarity these days." Tears welled in her eyes. "I thought I was going to lose everything." "No, my dear, don't think that," he said gently, reaching out to touch her shoulder reassuringly. "Kindness always prevails in the end. It's like a light that pierces the darkness. I myself lost my wife many years ago due to precisely these kinds of protocols, due to a blind adherence to rules when the doctors dared not deviate, and it left a deep wound within me. You've reminded me what it's worth continuing to fight for throughout life, for justice, for humanity in this world of bureaucracy and indifference." They spoke for a long time about his discoveries, about her mother, and about how intrigue stifles humanity. "Remain as you are," he said finally. "The world desperately needs heroes like you, those who aren't afraid to stand for truth and justice, despite all obstacles." That evening at home, Masha hugged her. "Mom, they showed you on the news," she exclaimed, bouncing on the spot. "You saved such an important man, and everyone's talking about you." Angelina laughed, a genuine, heartfelt sound. The laughter banished the last vestiges of her fatigue, and she pulled her daughter close, feeling love overflow her heart. "Yes, my little sunshine, it's true," she replied, kissing Masha's forehead. "Everything is good now, everything is settled." But the tension hadn't completely dissipated. Her situation had changed, but the system remained. She knew there would be obstacles, the intrigue wouldn't disappear, but she would remain human. Several days passed since the pivotal commission meeting, and the hospital seemed transformed. The corridors, once gray and cold, now hummed with a spirit of change. The journalists had departed, but their reports had made their mark. The rescue of academician Lavrentiev was covered in the nation's leading newspapers and featured in the evening news broadcasts. This story became a symbol of the triumph of the common person over bureaucracy. Angelina had unexpectedly become a heroine, not one who sought fame and applause in public, but a quiet, genuine one, the kind who changes the world through small but significant actions. Her colleagues now looked at her with sincere respect, and even the stern chief physician, Kovalyov, had noticeably softened. During morning briefings where daily plans were discussed, he praised her professionalism and initiative, though a flicker of awkwardness from recent events still crossed his eyes. But Angelina didn't revel in it. She returned to her work as if nothing had happened, checking on patients, dispensing medication, listening to their stories. The memory of how the system had almost broken her still warmed her. What if Ilya Viktorovich had been an ordinary person? She thought again. I would have been fired, and no one would have intervened. This thought plagued her. She saw how intrigue and bureaucracy stifled kindness and prevented lives from being saved. Nurses were afraid to step outside the box. Doctors blindly followed protocols. This needs to change, she decided, and academician Lavrentiev became her ally. He recovered quickly thanks to that very medication. They now often conversed in his room. Ilya Viktorovich, his eyes bright, spoke of his life, of the Nobel Prize he received for his quantum physics discovery, of the laboratories where he worked. I've witnessed firsthand how rigid rules and bureaucracy kill innovation, stifling the creative spark in academic science, he said thoughtfully. The same happens in medicine, where formalities are prioritized over human life. You, Angelina, have reminded me of what's most important, of humanity, of the fact that behind all protocols are real people with their suffering and hopes. Angelina nodded. I simply couldn't stand by and watch a person who could be saved with available means die on a hospital bed. He smiled, and that saved her, and would now save others. Together, they conceived an ambitious plan, born from their conversations like a seed cast upon fertile ground. Lavrentiev, leveraging his extensive connections cultivated over years in scientific circles and high positions, made a direct call to the Ministry of Health, where he had old acquaintances, and penned a detailed letter to the Russian Academy of Sciences, which, incidentally, was co-signed by other prominent scientists. We will establish a special fund to support courageous medical professionals like you, he explained to her one evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the room in golden hues. Grants for the purchase and testing of experimental drugs, legal protection against bureaucracy and unfair commissions, so that doctors aren't afraid to take risks to save a life. Angelina was surprised. For me, for everyone, for brave medical workers like you who prioritize life over rules, he replied confidently. And you will be on the funds board. Your ideas and experience are needed. It felt like a dream. She, a simple paramedic, on the board of the fund. What if it didn't work out? The intrigue hadn't vanished. Kovalyov, though he had apologized, still eyed their meetings with suspicion. Why meddle in politics, in these high spheres? He would sometimes grumble in the corridor when he saw Angelina leaving a patient's room. This isn't the business of medical professionals. We are here for treatment, not reform. One evening after her shift, Angelina sat in the hospital park. Leaves rustled underfoot, the rain having given way to a clear sky. She thought of her mother, her daughter, and how steadfastness in conviction helps overcome obstacles. Suddenly, her phone rang. Kovalyov. Angelina Vladimirovna, please come to my office. Urgently. Her heart sank. She went, bracing herself for the worst. In the office sat not only the chief physician, but also Irina Sergeyevna, the head of the department, Smirnov and Ilya Viktorovich, already on his feet in a suit. Please sit down, Kovalyov said, his voice trembling. I want to offer a formal apology to everyone. Angelina froze. He continued, Your breach of protocol? No, your courageous decision saved not only the patient's life, but also the reputation of our entire hospital, elevating it to a new level. The Ministry of Health has allocated a substantial grant for the modernization of equipment and facilities, and we have decided to promote you to the position of senior paramedic with a corresponding salary increase. Irina Sergeyevna nodded. You have earned it. We all made a mistake. Smirnov added, and from myself personally, you are a true heroine, Angelina, an example for all of us. I am proud that you work in my department. Ilya Viktorovich smiled. I told you they'll ask for forgiveness themselves. Tears welled in her eyes. This was a turning point, not just in her career, but in their hearts. Angelina stood up. Thank you all. But let's change the system fundamentally so that no medical professional fears saving lives, so that rules serve people and not the other way around. Lavrentiev's fund launched within a week. A grand presentation in the hospital's conference hall, attended by the press, journalists with cameras, and even the Minister of Health, who came in person. Angelina addressed the audience. Her voice was firm and inspiring. Kindness is not weakness. It is a strength that overcomes all intrigue and obstacles. We remain human despite everything, and that makes us stronger. At home, Masha waited with a drawing. Mom in a white coat, holding a heart. "Mom, you're a hero. You save people," she squeaked. Angelina hugged her daughter. "We all save each other, sunshine." Ilya Viktorovich was discharged but remained a friend. He called, offered advice. The hospital was subtly changing. Protocols revised by the Ministry of Health became more flexible, allowing more room for intuition. Colleagues more readily shared ideas, unafraid of judgment. Angelina walked the corridors, feeling a warmth in her chest, as if the sun were shining within. She had overcome everything: strict orders, humiliating commissions, paralyzing fear, and remained a human being with a kind, open heart, ready for new battles and challenges. Life continued, filled with hope and faith in a better tomorrow.